Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Night of the Assassin, also known as The Assassin, a Korean action movie from 2023. The following plot synopsis was paraphrased from the website Windows on Worlds, which is a good website for movie reviews, especially some Asian stuff they have on there. Set in feudal Korea, the film takes place in a world in which human lives have no meaning, and corrupt authorities fight amongst themselves while exploiting the suffering people for their own gain. As someone later says, there's no end to a person's greed in this constantly uncertain society. Inan, played by Shin Hyun-joon, is regarded as the best assassin in Joseon, seeing as his targets always end up dead. But it seems the moral duplicities of his life as a sword for hire have begun to weigh on him, resulting in a heart that is, in effect, broken. His doctor warns him that his body can no longer support martial arts. The only thing that might help him is a mythical herb that he isn't really sure actually exists. Weakened as he is, knives are quickly out for him. Now, early on, our protagonist collapses during the opening scene due to his physical condition, and as the plot synopsis mentions, his doctor tells him to stop martial arts, or else he will become even more ill. Now, I was quite amused by this conversation, in some sense, because the doctor also mentions that this man, our protagonist, should avoid having sex as well. But if he really needs to, he should do it slowly. I just found that to be quite amusing in terms of the conversation. There's definitely an element of humor, I think, to that line of dialogue, but maybe that was just me. So the good guy's very inconvenienced by the situation and chooses to live a quiet life, but of course, trouble finds him and he has to pick up his sword again. Story, as you could tell, very cliche and commonplace. I mean, we've seen this a million times before, right? And unfortunately, the script writing in this film in particular is very basic. You know, it's not especially interesting in terms of like the characters or the story, and there's very little creativity in this. The characters themselves kind of bland too, you know? This weakness in writing does create some pacing issues, because the stuff in between the action scenes is pretty forgettable. So they don't really, there's not a whole lot that's memorable in this from the non-action standpoint. And there are two other aspects to Night of the Assassin that also hurt its pacing. Firstly, the quantity of action is almost non-existent during like the opening half of the film. At one point, I was like desperately waiting for an action scene to show up, and that's not good. Secondly, production values are kind of low in this. I wasn't really expecting that going into it. I didn't know what the budget level was, but this must have been a lower budget flick because there's nothing impressive from a set design standpoint. And budget isn't even really the issue or an excuse because, as a counterexample, the Korean film Slate from a few years ago had a low budget, but I liked the aesthetic and the environment that they created within that budget. Night of the Assassin is just kind of boring to look at. There are some bits of humor early on, as I alluded to, which creates some tonal confusion, because early on in the film, I wasn't sure if this was supposed to be like a comedy or not. There's a big dose of humor after like that opening series of moments, and none of it is especially funny. Although it's not especially bad either. I would say, the humor, which the heaviest doses are during the opening half, it's fine. It's fine. Now, the lead actor has been in a number of movies over the years, including, but not limited to, Shadowless Sword, much better film than this, Kiss Me, Kill Me, Guns and Talks, the Korean horror film Face from 2004, and the Marrying the Mafia sequels. So he's a guy, if you've been, watching Korean films from the 21st century, especially the 2000s, early 2010s, if you're familiar with the industry, you've definitely seen this guy around. I do like him as an actor, and he does a good job in his role here. The performances in Night of the Assassin are good overall, but there's nothing exceptional, and of course the script writing really doesn't benefit the performers that much, because they're not given a whole lot of interesting things to do. So, can the quality of the action make up for all of this? Because right now we're talking like a below-average movie. I think it's questionable. The opening sword fight is brief, but pretty stylish, I think, using some background lights that show only shadows through thin, like a line of thin room dividers. Very short-lived, cannot be described as a set piece per se. We get no set pieces at all for quite some time in the film. But there are multiple false starts, and this gets annoying. There are multiple false starts to scenes that seem like they're going to be action-packed, but in fact they're not. So as I mentioned earlier, at one point I was dying to see an actual fight scene, because there were times where the characters would start drawing their swords, right? And you're like, all right, baby, let's go. And then nothing happens. Someone will interrupt them, or something will happen, and then they'll just keep talking for a while. And, obviously the story's not good enough to support this type of, tactic from the filmmakers. So it does become annoying after a while. But in any case, we finally get an extended fight, like near the 1 hour mark. It's a one-on-one fight, decent. Nothing impressive in terms of choreography, but it's a decent scene involving a bad guy who's cracked out on drugs, and his girlfriends, or the prostitutes that he's with, are all cracked out too, and they just kind of watch calmly as they continue to do their drugs while these two guys are fighting. I thought the idea of the scene was more interesting than the actual fight itself, but that's that. A few minutes later, we get a one versus many scene, a little bit better than the one that came before it. There is some shaky cam at times when it goes to first-person perspective. Thankfully, only a portion of the fight is shot that way. The rest of the scene is pretty good, but again, nothing great. The next fight is like a one-on-one duel, another one, and it's a little bit better than the prior fights. They're improving little by little during the fights. Shot in a more effective way again. Pretty good. And then we get the final fight, which is kind of like a mix of a one-on-one and one versus many battle. Again, it has a few good moments. I think some of the individual maneuvers in the finale are probably the best in the movie. There are a few cool little moves and counterattacks in this. But I think that overall the action in this film, it's pretty good, but it fails to really excite me and impress me. You know what I mean? But it's pretty good. So I don't think it really compensates for all the other stuff that was below average or average. You know what I mean? The fighting's probably the best thing in the movie, but it's only pretty good. I simply cannot recommend Night of the Assassin, I don't think. I mean, sure, if you mix in all those action scenes during the second half that pop up, some people may find this to be a passable movie. I think at its best. It's not terrible overall because of the action, but it's not worth recommending when there's so many other better swordplay flicks out there. The Swordsman from 2020, way better than this. As one example from Korea, or even the aforementioned Slate from 2020 is a better movie than this, and that's that's a lower budget flick as well. And obviously, if you go to Japan, you got all 5 of the Rurouni Kenshin live action films from the last 10 years alone that you should watch before this. So, yeah, I don't really recommend this. Available on YouTube, Amazon Streaming, and Hi-Ya if you really want to dig into it. And as always, I'll see you next time.